Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the center of the Grand Hall on Zentara Prime. The alien building rose high above him, its walls made of black stone that seemed to swallow light. Around him sat the representatives of 47 different species, but Jake knew who really controlled this place. The Corvani Empire had ruled the galaxy for 300 years, and they made sure everyone remembered it. The Corvani Chancellor Vexthul rose from his throne. He was tall, even by alien standards, with gray skin that looked like old leather. His forearms moved as he spoke, and his voice echoed through the hall like thunder. Jake had heard that voice many times before, but today felt different. Today felt final. The human species has grown beyond acceptable limits, Vexthul announced, his black eyes fixed on Jake as he continued. Your people now control 47 star systems. You build ships faster than any species we have seen. You develop new weapons and technologies without asking permission from this council. Jake kept his face calm, but inside he felt his anger growing. Humans had joined the Galactic Federation 200 years ago as equals. They had followed the rules, paid their taxes, and helped fight the Federation's wars. Now the Corvani wanted to treat them like children. Furthermore, Vexthul continued, your species breeds too quickly. Human populations grow by millions each year across your colonies. This threatens the balance of power that has kept peace in our galaxy. Several alien representatives nodded their agreement. Jake recognized most of them as species that the Corvani had conquered long ago. They had learned to agree with whatever their masters wanted. Vexthul raised all four of his arms, and the hall fell silent. Therefore, the High Council has reached a decision. Humanity will reduce its territory by 80%. You will surrender 38 of your colonies to Corvani administration. You will also implement population controls to limit your breeding to acceptable levels. Jake felt his heart pounding, but he forced himself to remain still. He had expected something bad, but not this. The Corvani were demanding that humanity give up almost everything they had built. There is more, Vexthul said. Humanity will also surrender all advanced military technologies to the Corvani fleet. Your shipyards will be placed under our supervision. Your military will be reduced to a small defense force suitable for a minor species. The Chancellor stepped down from his throne and walked toward Jake. Each of his steps echoed through the silent hall. You have 30 standard galactic days to begin compliance. If you refuse, the Corvani Empire will take what it requires by force. Jake finally spoke. His voice was steady and clear. Chancellor Vexthul, humanity has been a loyal member of the Galactic Federation for 2 centuries. We have never broken galactic law. We have never attacked another species without cause. What you demand would destroy everything my people have worked to build. Vexthul's mouth curved into what might have been a smile, but there was no warmth in it. Your species is young, Admiral Morrison. You do not understand how the galaxy works. Some species are meant to rule, others are meant to serve. The Corvani have maintained order for 300 years because we understand this truth. And what if we refuse? Jake asked. The Chancellor's 4 arms spread wide. Then you will learn what happens to species that grow too proud. The Zelthani once controlled 50 systems. They refused our guidance. Now they exist only in history books. The Maltari thought their technology could protect them. Their homeworld is now a mining colony for Corvani workers. Jake felt cold fear run down his spine, but he also felt something else. Anger. Pure, burning anger at this creature who stood before him, making threats against his people. I will carry your message to Earth, Jake said. But I cannot speak for what my government will decide. You will do more than carry a message, Vexthul replied. You will recommend compliance. Because if you do not, every human death in the coming war will be on your conscience. The Chancellor returned to his throne. This session is ended. Admiral Morrison, you have 29 days remaining. As Jake walked out of the hall, he felt the eyes of every alien representative watching him. Some looked afraid, others looked satisfied. None of them looked surprised. They had all seen this happen before. 3 hours later, Jake sat in his ship as it jumped through hyperspace toward Earth. His communications officer, Lieutenant Carl Wright, brought him an urgent message from the outer colonies. "Sir, we're receiving reports from Captain Lisa Bryant on the Rim Patrol. She says Corvani fleets are moving toward our settlements." "Large fleets, sir." Jake studied the report on his screen. The Corvani had dozens of ships heading toward human space. They were not waiting for the 30-day deadline. They were already preparing for war. "Send a priority message to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Tell them we need an emergency session with the President. Tell them the Corvani have already made their choice." As his ship raced toward Earth, Jake thought about the other piece of intelligence he had gathered on Zentara Prime. His contact in the Taldari underground had slipped him a data chip containing disturbing information. The Corvani had not demanded surrender from just humanity. Over the past 50 years, they had made similar demands to 12 other species. Species that had refused were systematically destroyed or enslaved. Humanity was not facing a simple political disagreement. They were facing a test of survival. The Corvani Empire had decided that humans were becoming too strong, too numerous, and too independent. They wanted humanity reduced to the status of a servant species, or they wanted humanity gone. Jake closed his eyes and tried to imagine explaining this to President Dan Cooper and the Earth government. How do you tell an entire species that their choice is slavery or extinction? How do you prepare billions of people for a war they never wanted against an enemy that controlled most of the galaxy? But as his ship jumped closer to Earth, Jake began to think about something else. He thought about human history, about all the times his species had faced impossible odds. He thought about the wars humans had fought against each other, and how they had always found ways to keep fighting even when defeat seemed certain. The Corvani had ruled the galaxy for 300 years. They were used to species that gave up when faced with superior force. But they had never fought humans before. They had never fought a species that considered surrender worse than death. Jake opened his eyes and looked at the stars streaming past his ship. In 28 days, the galaxy was going to learn something new about humanity. The Corvani thought they were dealing with just another species that would bow to their demands. They were about to discover how wrong they were. The alarm screamed across New Boston Colony as the first Corvani ships dropped out of hyperspace. Commander Ryan Torres ran through the corridors of the command center, his boots echoing against the metal floors. He had been expecting this attack for days, but seeing it happen still sent ice through his veins. "How many ships?" he shouted to Colonel Maria Santos as she tracked the incoming fleet on her scanner. 43 vessels, sir, all of them bigger than anything we have here." Maria's voice stayed calm, but Ryan could see the fear in her eyes. New Boston had only 6 defense ships and a handful of orbital platforms. Ryan grabbed the communications unit. "All civilian transports begin immediate evacuation to the inner system. All defense units form up at Grid 77. We're going to make them fight for every inch." 15 light-years away, the same scene played out at Terra Vista Colony. The Corvani fleet there was even larger, 60 ships against a small human outpost that had never been designed to fight a real war. The colonists had 20 minutes to get their children to the shelter bunkers before the first energy beams started falling from the sky. At Harmony Station, the attack came without any warning at all. The space station simply exploded as Corvani battleships opened fire from long range. 3,000 humans died in the first 30 seconds, and the survivors found themselves fighting hand-to-hand combat in the station's corridors as Corvani Marines boarded the wreckage. Back on Earth, President Dan Cooper stood in the Situation Room watching the reports flood in. Admiral Pete Johnson and General Amy Walsh flanked him on both sides, their faces grim as the casualty numbers climbed higher. "They didn't wait for the deadline," General Walsh said. "They're hitting our colonies while we're still trying to decide how to respond to their ultimatum." President Cooper clenched his fists. "They want to show us what happens when we don't surrender fast enough. They're trying to scare us into giving up without a fight." "It's working on some people," Admiral Johnson reported. "We're getting calls from 12 colony governors asking if they should surrender to avoid destruction." Cooper turned to face the communication screen. "Get me Admiral Morrison, and patch me through to every human colony, every ship, every outpost. It's time to tell our people what we're really facing." Within an hour, Cooper's message reached every human settlement in the galaxy. His words were simple and direct. The Corvani Empire has shown us who they really are. They attack civilians. They murder families. They destroy everything we have built. This is not about territory or resources. This is about whether humanity will exist as a free species or disappear entirely. The president paused, looking directly into the camera. I am authorizing Protocol 7. Every human ship, every human soldier, every human citizen is now part of our defense. We will not surrender. We will not run. We will fight. Protocol 7 was a plan that Earth's military had developed in secret over 50 years. It assumed that humanity would someday face an enemy too powerful to defeat through normal warfare. The protocol authorized every human commander to use any means necessary to protect their people, including weapons and tactics that violated galactic warfare conventions. Dr. Kevin Turner had been waiting for this moment his entire career. Deep in the underground laboratories beneath Earth's military headquarters, he and his team began unsealing projects that had been classified for decades. Weapons that used human understanding of controlled violence in ways that alien species could not imagine. The gravity mines are ready, Dr. Turner reported to General Walsh. We can deploy them in any system where the Corvani try to establish a blockade. The quantum disruption torpedoes need another week of testing, but the stealth fighters are fully operational. General Walsh studied the list of available weapons. What about the psychological warfare packages? Those are ready too, Turner replied. We've analyzed Corvani communication frequencies and developed programs that will cause confusion and panic in their fleet formations. The aliens think in very organized patterns. If we can disrupt those patterns, their coordination falls apart. Meanwhile, Captain Lisa Bryant was racing toward the battle at New Boston with every ship she could gather. Her fleet was small, only 18 vessels, but they carried the new weapons that Dr. Turner's team had developed. More importantly, they carried human crews who had trained their entire lives for exactly this kind of fight. Enemy fleet is still engaged with the colony defenses, her sensor operator reported. Commander Torres is making them pay for every ship they destroy. Lisa smiled grimly. Ryan Torres had been her friend since their academy days. She knew he would never surrender, even against impossible odds. Signal the fleet. We're going in. Fast and hard. Hit their supply ships first, then work our way up to their battleships. The Battle of New Boston began when Lisa's fleet dropped out of hyperspace directly behind the Corvani formation. The aliens had been expecting human reinforcements to arrive from the usual jump points, following standard galactic military doctrine. Instead, the human ships appeared in the middle of their fleet using new jump technology that the Corvani had never seen before. Lisa's ship, the Vengeance, fired its first shots at point-blank range into a Corvani supply vessel. The alien ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the entire battle area. Around her, the rest of the human fleet spread out in a pattern that looked random but had been carefully planned to cause maximum confusion. Their fleet is breaking formation, her tactical officer reported. They don't know how to respond to our attack pattern. The Corvani had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries using overwhelming force and disciplined formations. Their ships moved in precise geometric patterns that allowed them to concentrate their firepower and coordinate their defenses. But human tactics were based on chaos and unpredictability. Where the Corvani expected organized battle lines, they found human ships attacking from unexpected angles. Where they expected retreats when outnumbered, they found human captains charging directly at superior forces. Where they expected surrender when faced with destruction, they found human crews fighting until their ships exploded around them. Commander Ryan Torres watched from his battered command center as the tide of battle slowly turned. His own ships were destroyed or heavily damaged, but the arrival of Captain Bryant's fleet had changed everything. The Corvani fleet, which had seemed invincible an hour ago, was now retreating toward the edge of the system. Signal Captain Bryant, Torres ordered. Tell her that New Boston is secure, but we need immediate medical supplies and repair ships. And tell her thank you. The victory at New Boston was small compared to the size of the Corvani Empire, but its effects rippled across the galaxy within hours. For the first time in 300 years, a Corvani fleet had been defeated in open battle. The news reached every human colony and every alien species that lived under Corvani rule. On Earth, President Cooper received the battle reports with satisfaction, but also with the knowledge that this was only the beginning. The Corvani would not accept defeat easily. They would return with larger fleets and more powerful weapons. But humanity had sent a message of its own. The species that the Corvani had tried to intimidate with their ultimatum was not going to surrender. They were going to fight back, and they were going to win. Admiral Morrison arrived on Earth that evening with intelligence that changed everything. The Corvani were not just planning to reduce human territory, they were planning to eliminate humanity entirely. The choice was no longer between freedom and slavery. It was between victory and extinction. The galaxy was about to learn what humans could do when they had no choice left but to win. The Corvani Third Fleet had never lost a battle in its 200-year history. Admiral Zekthor commanded 60 of the Empire's most powerful warships, and he had crushed rebellions on 40 different worlds. When the High Command ordered him to destroy the human fleet at Epsilon Ridge, he expected another easy victory. He was wrong. Commander Jack Davis led his squadron of 12 human fighters into the heart of the Corvani formation. His ships were smaller and faster than anything the aliens had seen before, and they moved in patterns that seemed to make no sense. While the Corvani battleships tried to target them with their heavy weapons, the human fighters slipped between, their firing arcs like ghosts. Blue Squadron hit their command ship from below, Jack ordered over the radio. Red Squadron, take out their communication arrays. Gold Squadron, you're with me. We're going straight up the middle. Admiral Zekthor watched in growing alarm as his perfect battle formation began to fall apart. Human fighters appeared and disappeared from his sensors, striking at weak points his tactical computers had never identified. His ship's shields flared, under repeated attacks from weapons that seemed to ignore standard defensive protocols. "Sir, we've lost contact with 12 vessels," his communications officer reported. "The humans are jamming our fleet coordination frequencies." Zekthor had fought hundreds of battles, but he had never faced an enemy like this. Every species in the galaxy followed the same basic rules of warfare. You formed lines, you concentrated, firepower. You targeted the largest enemy ships first. The humans seemed to be breaking every rule he had ever learned. "All ships fall back to defensive positions," he ordered. "Reform the battle line at Grid 47. But the human fighters followed his retreating ships, attacking constantly and giving the Corvani no time to reorganize. When Jack Davis finally led his squadron in a final attack run on Zekthor's flagship, the Corvani admiral realized he was going to lose his first battle. The explosion of the Corvani command ship lit up space for millions of kilometers. When the light faded, Admiral Zekthor and his entire fleet were gone. Commander Jack Davis and his fighters had destroyed 60 enemy vessels while losing only 3 of their own ships. News of the victory reached Earth within hours, and President Dan Cooper called an emergency meeting with his military commanders. General Amy Walsh spread tactical reports across the conference table, her face showing the first hint of hope they had seen in weeks. "The Corvani are not invincible," she announced. "Their ships are powerful, but their tactics are predictable. They've been fighting the same way for centuries, and they don't know how to adapt when someone breaks their rules." Admiral Pete Johnson nodded in agreement. "Our pilots are reporting the same thing from every engagement. The aliens expect us to fight like everyone else in the galaxy. When we don't, they fall apart." Dr. Susan Clark entered the room carrying a data pad filled with biological analysis reports. "I've been studying captured Corvani soldiers and ship recordings. Their brains are wired differently from ours. They're excellent at following complex plans and maintaining discipline under pressure, but they struggle with rapid tactical changes." President Cooper leaned forward. "What does that mean for our strategy?" "It means we need to keep doing exactly what we're doing," Dr. Clark replied. "Hit them fast, hit them from unexpected directions, and never give them time to reorganize. Their strength becomes a weakness when they can't adapt quickly enough." While the military leaders planned their next moves, Ambassador Kate Wilson was having a secret meeting with representatives from the Taldari resistance. The Taldari had lost their homeworld to Corvani expansion 50 years ago, and they had been waiting for someone strong enough to challenge the Empire. "We can provide you with detailed intelligence about Corvani military installations," the Taldari leader offered. "We have agents throughout their territory, and we know where their supply bases and communication centers are located." Kate studied the star charts the aliens had brought. "What do you want in return?" "Help us take back our homeworld." The Corvani have been using it as a military base for decades. If you can destroy their fleet there, we can reclaim what they stole from us. The alliance was formed that night, and within days, other species began reaching out to the human government. The Maltari, the Zelthani survivors, the Crimson Sector rebels. All of them had been waiting for someone to stand up to the Corvani Empire. Now they saw hope. Captain Tim Foster commanded the newly launched Earthship Retribution when it made the first joint operation with alien allies. His target was a Corvani supply depot in the Nexus system, a massive complex that provided fuel and ammunition to their fleets throughout the Outer Rim. Taldari scouts report minimal security, his intelligence officer informed him. The Corvani never expected anyone to attack this far into their territory. The raid was a complete success. Foster's Marines, led by Sergeant Lucy Stone, captured the entire facility without losing a single soldier. More importantly, they recovered advanced Corvani technology and detailed information about enemy fleet movements. Dr. Kevin Turner's research team worked around the clock to analyze the captured alien technology. What they discovered changed everything. The Corvani jump drives were more advanced than human technology, but they used the same basic principles. By combining alien engineering with human innovation, they could build ships that were faster and more maneuverable than anything in the galaxy. "We can have the first prototype ready in 2 weeks," Dr. Turner reported to General Walsh. "If the tests are successful, we can retrofit our entire fleet within 3 months." Meanwhile, Colonel Helen Baker was organizing something that had never been seen in galactic history, a multi-species resistance movement. On worlds throughout Corvani space, humans were teaching alien civilians how to fight back against their oppressors. "The key is to never fight them the way they expect," Helen explained to a group of Taldari rebels. "Hit their patrols at night. Sabotage their equipment. Make them afraid to leave their bases. Force them to spread their troops thin, trying to control territory they can't actually hold." The guerrilla warfare tactics that humans had perfected over centuries of fighting each other proved devastatingly effective against the Corvani. The Empire had ruled through fear and overwhelming force, but they had never faced populations that refused to be terrorized. On Earth, President Cooper faced his own challenges. Senator Paul Green led a growing movement of politicians who wanted to negotiate with the Corvani rather than continue fighting. "We're risking everything on a war we might not be able to win," Green argued in the Senate. "Perhaps we should consider some form of compromise." Cooper's response was swift and direct. "There is no compromise with an enemy that wants to exterminate us. The Corvani have shown us what they do to species that oppose them. We fight or we die. There is no middle ground." Agent Lucy Stone, now working deep in Corvani territory, sent back intelligence that proved Cooper's point. The Corvani were building massive prison ships designed to transport entire human populations to labor camps. They were also developing biological weapons specifically designed to target human DNA. "They're not planning to just defeat us," Lucy reported. "They're planning to erase us completely. Every man, woman, and child." The intelligence reached Earth just as Captain Lisa Bryant was preparing to test the first ship equipped with hybrid human Corvani technology. The new vessel, designated the Earth Defense Ship Defiance, could jump farther and faster than any previous human vessel. "All systems are green," Bryant reported as her ship prepared for its first combat mission. "We're ready to show the Corvani what happens when they push humanity too far." Admiral Pete Johnson commanded the fleet that would escort the Defiance on its maiden voyage. Their target was a Corvani fortress world that controlled 3 major shipping routes. If they could capture it, they would cut off supplies to enemy fleets throughout the sector. As the human fleet jumped toward enemy territory, Soldiers throughout the galaxy prepared for the battles to come. The Corvani Empire had ruled for 3 centuries, but their reign was ending. Humanity had shown the galaxy that the Empire could be defeated, and now every oppressed species was ready to fight for their freedom. The tide had turned, and there was no going back. Operation Thunderbolt began at exactly 0600 hours Earth Standard Time. Across 12 different star systems, human fleets jumped out of hyperspace and began attacking Corvani military targets. The coordinated assault was the largest operation in human military history, and it caught the enemy completely off guard. Captain Lisa Bryant stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching as Korvac Station grew larger on her main screen. The massive shipyard was the heart of Corvani military production, churning out hundreds of warships every year. It had never been successfully attacked in its 200-year history, protected by defense platforms and patrol fleets that could destroy any conventional assault force. But Bryant's strike force was far from conventional. 12 ships equipped with hybrid human Corvani technology, carrying weapons that the enemy had never seen before. They had approached the station using a route that no sane military commander would attempt, threading through an asteroid field that should have torn their ships apart. "Stealth systems are holding," her tactical officer reported. "The Corvani sensors still can't detect us." Bryant smiled grimly. Human engineers had studied captured enemy technology for months, learning how Corvani sensors worked and how to fool them. The result was a cloaking system that made human ships invisible to alien detection equipment. "All ships begin final approach," Bryant ordered. "Remember, we hit fast and hard, don't give them time to call for help." 15 light-years away, Commander Ryan Torres was leading a very different kind of mission. His Marine assault team had infiltrated the Corvani intelligence hub on Nexus 7, one of the most heavily guarded facilities in the Empire. Getting inside had required 3 weeks of careful planning and the help of Taldari resistance fighters who knew the facility's layout. "Sergeant Mike Jones, report," Torres whispered into his communications unit as his team moved through the complex's corridors. "Explosives are in place on the main computer core," Jones replied. "Corporal Beth Adams has secured the data archives. We're ready to extract the intelligence and blow this place." Torres nodded, checking his watch. They had exactly 12 minutes before the facility's security rotation would discover their presence. 12 minutes to download decades of Corvani military secrets and get out alive. The intelligence they were stealing would change the war. Hidden in the enemy's own files were detailed plans for biological weapons designed to kill every human in the galaxy. Records of other species the Corvani had eliminated over the centuries. Most importantly, communications between Corvani military commanders that revealed growing doubt about their ability to defeat humanity. "Download complete," Adams reported. "Sir, you need to see this. The Corvani leadership is lying to their own people about how badly they're losing this war." Meanwhile, Captain Tim Foster was broadcasting human propaganda throughout Corvani space, using captured enemy communication networks to spread messages of hope to oppressed populations. His words reached millions of aliens who had never heard anyone speak out against the Empire. "The Corvani want you to believe they are invincible," Foster's voice echoed across dozens of worlds. "But they are losing. Every day, more of their ships are destroyed. Every day, more of their territories are liberated. The Empire is crumbling, and they know it." The psychological impact was devastating. Corvani military commanders found themselves dealing with rebellions on worlds that had been peaceful for decades. Their troops were demoralized by constant defeats and the knowledge that their leaders had been lying to them about human capabilities. Back at Korvac Station, Bryant's attack reached its climax as human ships emerged from stealth and began firing on the station's vital systems. The Corvani defense fleet scrambled to respond, but they were too late. Explosions rippled across the massive structure as human weapons found their targets. "Primary shipyard destroyed," Bryant's weapons officer reported. "Secondary construction bays are venting atmosphere. The station's main reactor is going critical." Bryant watched as 2 centuries of Corvani military engineering went up in flames. The station had been building ships to replace the losses from human attacks, but now it would never build anything again. "All ships withdraw to safe distance," she ordered. "Let's watch this place die." The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. When the light faded, Korvax Station was gone, along with half the Corvani fleet that had been under construction. The Empire's ability to replace its losses had been crippled in a single strike. Dr. Susan Clark was analyzing the results from her latest weapon when news of the successful raids reached Earth. Her team had developed a virus that could temporarily disrupt Corvani neural functions, making them unable to coordinate their military actions. The weapon was non-lethal, but it would make entire enemy fleets helpless for hours at a time. The Ethical Review Board has approved the weapon for use, she reported to President Dan Cooper. We can deploy it whenever you give the order. Cooper studied the weapon specifications. Part of him was uncomfortable with biological warfare, even non-lethal versions, but the intelligence from Nexus 7 had shown him what the Corvani were planning for humanity. Sometimes you had to fight monsters with their own methods. Deploy the weapon, he decided. But only against military targets. I won't have civilians harmed, even enemy civilians. The virus was first used during the Battle of Crimson Nebula, where Admiral Pete Johnson's fleet faced a Corvani force twice their size. When the biological weapon was released, the enemy ships simply stopped fighting. Their crews were alive, but unable to think clearly enough to operate their weapons or coordinate their movements. Johnson's fleet captured 60 enemy vessels without firing a shot. More importantly, they captured 3 Corvani admirals who provided detailed information about enemy troop movements and strategic plans. The Corvani military is in complete disarray, Johnson reported to Earth Command. They're pulling back from forward positions throughout the galaxy. Some of their commanders are talking about requesting a ceasefire. But Chancellor Vex Thule was not ready to give up. Intelligence reports from Agent Lucy Stone revealed that the Corvani leader was planning one final desperate gambit. He was preparing to deploy planet-killer weapons against Earth and the major human colonies. He's lost his mind, Stone reported from deep in enemy territory. His own generals think he's insane, but they're too afraid to stop him. He'd rather destroy everything than admit defeat. The planet killers were massive ships capable of cracking entire worlds apart. The Corvani had built them as weapons of last resort, never intending to actually use them, but Vex Thule saw no other way to stop the human advance. Dr. Kevin Turner's team worked frantically to develop a defense against the planet killers. The weapons used exotic matter reactors that could destabilize entire planetary cores. But Turner believed that the same technology could be turned against itself. We can build gravitational disruptor devices, he explained to General Amy Walsh. If we can get them close enough to the planet killers, we can cause their exotic matter reactors to malfunction. The weapons will destroy themselves instead of their targets. The plan was incredibly dangerous. Someone would have to fly close enough to the planet killers to deploy the disruptor devices, and that someone would probably not survive the mission. But without the plan, billions of humans would die when the weapons reached their targets. Commander Jack Davis volunteered to lead the suicide mission. His squadron had been fighting the Corvani since the first battle at New Boston, and he knew this might be their last chance to save humanity. We've been pushing them back for months, he told his pilots. Now we have to make sure they can't push back. As Davis prepared his squadron for the mission, reports came in from across the galaxy. The Corvani Empire was collapsing on every front. Dozens of worlds had declared independence, and alien resistance movements were growing stronger every day. The empire that had ruled for 3 centuries was falling apart in a matter of months. But the planet killers were still coming, and Earth had less than a week to stop them. The final battle was about to begin, and humanity would either emerge victorious or face complete extinction. The galaxy held its breath as human ships raced to intercept the ultimate weapons of the Corvani Empire. 6 months after the first Corvani attack, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. Human fleets patrolled space that had been under alien control for centuries. The Taldari were rebuilding their homeworld with help from Captain Lisa Bryant's task force. Species that had lived in fear for generations were declaring their independence from the crumbling empire. But Chancellor Vex Thule had one last card to play. Agent Lucy Stone crouched in the ventilation shaft above the Corvani High Command Center, listening to the desperate conversation below. Vex Thule's voice echoed through the chamber as he gave his final orders to the remaining fleet commanders. Deploy the planet killers immediately, the Chancellor commanded. Target Earth, New Boston, Terra Vista, and the 12 largest human colonies. If we cannot rule the galaxy, then we will make sure the humans cannot rule it either. Lucy felt her blood turn cold. The planet killers were moving faster than Earth Command had expected. They would reach the Sol system in less than 48 hours. She activated her emergency transmitter, sending a coded message across the galaxy. Midnight. Protocol confirmed. The final weapons are coming. All human forces prepare for the last battle. Admiral Jake Morrison received the message while coordinating the defense of Earth from his command ship in orbit. Around him, every human vessel that could fight was taking position throughout the solar system. Cargo ships had been converted into missile platforms. Civilian transports carried emergency evacuation supplies. Even the orbital construction yards were being used as weapon emplacements. Signal all fleet commanders, Morrison ordered. This is it. Everything we've fought for comes down to the next 2 days. President Dan Cooper stood in the orbital defense station, watching the preparations through the massive viewing windows. Below him, Earth continued its daily routine, but the people knew what was coming. There was no panic, no riots, no desperate attempts to flee. Humanity had learned what it meant to face extinction, and they had chosen to fight. General Amy Walsh coordinated the planetary defenses while Admiral Pete Johnson positioned the fleet. They had learned much about Corvani tactics over the past months, but the planet killers were unlike anything they had faced before. Each weapon was the size of a small moon, protected by shields that could withstand direct hits from entire fleets. Dr. Kevin Turner made final adjustments to his gravitational disruptor devices in his underground laboratory. The weapons were untested against real targets, built from theories and captured alien technology. But they were humanity's only hope of stopping weapons that could crack planets apart. The disruption field should cause the exotic matter in the planet killers to become unstable, Turner explained to Commander Jack Davis. But you'll have to get within 1 kilometer of the target for the device to work. At that range, when the weapon explodes, your ship won't survive. Davis nodded calmly. He had accepted this mission knowing it was a one-way trip. How many devices do we have? 4, Turner replied. 1 for each planet killer. Davis gathered his squadron leaders in the briefing room. These were pilots who had fought in every major battle of the war, men and women who had seen their friends die fighting impossible odds. Now they were being asked to make the ultimate sacrifice. I won't lie to you, Davis told them. This is a suicide mission. But if we don't stop those weapons, every human in the galaxy dies. Our families, our children, our entire species. Lieutenant, Sarah Mills raised her hand. Sir, request permission to volunteer for the mission. Permission granted. One by one, every pilot in the squadron volunteered. Davis had to turn away volunteers because he only had 4 devices. The hardest part was choosing who would live and who would die. The planet killers dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, exactly 47 hours after Lucy Stone's warning. They were massive beyond imagination, each one bristling, with weapons and protected by energy shields that glowed like miniature suns. Behind them came the last loyal Corvani fleet, 200 ships led by admirals who had chosen to follow their chancellor into madness. Admiral Morrison watched the enemy approach on his tactical display. All ships, engage the escort fleet. Give Commander Davis a clear path to the planet killers. The battle began as human ships swarmed toward the Corvani formation. The enemy had superior numbers and firepower, but human tactics had evolved far beyond simple ship-to-ship combat. Fighters attacked in coordinated swarms while larger vessels used hit-and-run tactics that confused the alien commanders. President Cooper took direct command of the orbital defenses as Corvani ships broke through the outer perimeter. Energy beams from enemy vessels struck the defense stations, but the humans had learned to build their fortifications to survive. Every installation had backup systems and redundant command centers. Sir, the planet killers are approaching Earth's orbit, his tactical officer reported. Commander Davis is beginning his attack run. Cooper watched on his screen as 4 small human fighters raced toward the massive alien weapons. Davis led the formation, his ship barely visible against the bulk of the nearest planet killer. Behind him, Lieutenant Mills and two other pilots followed in formation, each carrying a gravitational disruptor device. "This is Davis," the commander's voice crackled over the radio. "Beginning final approach. It's been an honor serving with all of you." Davis's ship reached the first planet killer and released its disruptor device. The weapon attached itself to the alien vessel's hull and began working immediately. Deep inside the planet killer, exotic matter began to destabilize as gravitational fields fluctuated beyond safe parameters. "Device deployed successfully," Davis reported. "The weapon is going critical. All ships clear the area." The explosion lit up half the solar system. When the light faded, both the planet killer and Davis's ship were gone. But his sacrifice had worked. The most powerful weapon in the Corvani arsenal had been destroyed by human ingenuity and courage. Lieutenant Mills followed seconds later, ramming her ship into the second planet killer as she deployed her disruptor device. The resulting explosion took out 3 Corvani escort ships along with the target. The remaining 2 pilots completed their missions with equal success, trading their lives to save billions of others. With their ultimate weapons destroyed, the Corvani fleet began to collapse. Chancellor Vexthul, watching from his flagship, realized that his empire was truly finished. The species he had tried to eliminate had proven stronger than everything he could throw at them. "All Corvani vessels, this is Admiral Morrison." Jake's voice echoed across the battlefield. "Your planet killers are destroyed. Your fleet is defeated. Surrender now and we will treat you with mercy." Vexthul's response was to order his remaining ships to fight to the death. But his own commanders had seen enough. One by one, Corvani vessels began surrendering or withdrawing from the battle. The Chancellor's flagship found itself alone, surrounded by human ships. President Cooper's voice reached Vexthul on an open channel. "Chancellor, your war is over. Surrender your ship and we will guarantee your safety." Vexthul's reply was to activate his ship's self-destruct sequence. The explosion marked the end of the Corvani Empire and the beginning of a new era in galactic history. 3 weeks later, representatives from dozens of species gathered on Earth to sign the Treaty of New Geneva. Admiral Morrison was appointed as the first human High Chancellor of the reformed Galactic Federation. The Corvani survivors, humbled by their defeat, accepted protectorate status under human oversight. Dr. Susan Clark established the Interspecies Cooperation Institute, dedicated to preventing future conflicts through understanding rather than domination. The galaxy had learned that cooperation was stronger than conquest, and that freedom was worth fighting for. As human explorers ventured into previously forbidden regions of space, they carried with them the lesson that the galaxy had learned, too late. Never push humanity too far, because when they push back, empires fall and civilizations rise from the ashes of tyranny. The age of human leadership had begun, built on the foundation of those who had sacrificed everything to ensure that freedom would survive.